Thanks for tuning in to the Joined Up Writing Podcast, a weekly show featuring interviews with fantastic authors sharing their personal stories on how and why they write. There's hints and tips for aspiring writers and great book reviews from top bloggers. Follow us on Twitter at JU Podcast. Right, cue the cheesy theme tune.
Put down your pen and stop your typing. Grab yourself a drink, cause it's Joined Up Writing.
Yes, hello and welcome to the Joined Up Writing Podcast, where a little procrastination can go a long way. I'm Wayne Kelly and it's episode 60, and that's if you don't include our TMTs, 2-minute tips, the brand new epilogue bonus shows and all the other goodies that you can find by heading over to our full archive over at joinedupwriting.co.uk. So today we've got an interview with debut novelist Aimee Brown, giving her perspective on being a first-time ChickLit author and how she spent years learning the ropes as a book blogger. Before that, a quick update from me. Thanks again to all of you who continue to share the show, including Ruth Long, Patty Stafford, Clearview Editing, Maria Smith, Elaine Moxon, Steph Broadrib, and I'm sure many others that came after it was time to record this intro. I also wanted to give mention and thanks to TW Ian, who left a really nice comment on the blog post that accompanied my recent interview with Simon Toyne. He said that what Simon said about getting the first draft done and what I said at the top of the show about looking forward to editing really resonated with him, and that the last couple of projects that he's worked on have all started from very messy first drafts. Like me, he's come to view the red pen edits not as problems to be fixed, but as opportunities to make the book even better, and I couldn't agree more, and I hope TW Ian will keep us up to date with how things progress. Good luck with that. And on that subject of feedback, I'd still like to get more of that from all of you. So how do you find the new format of the show? Are the epilogue bonus episodes proving interesting and useful? What about the length of the show? Is it too long? Too short? Are there specific topics you'd like me to cover or guests you'd like me to feature? Do you have any ideas for new segments you'd like to hear, like Book Bloggers Corner for example? And as well as feedback about the show, I'm really keen to feature more of what you, the listener, are up to. So, what are you currently working on? What are your writing goals for the coming months? Have you got any quick tips you want to share with all of us? Where do you listen to the show? Why not tweet me some pics of your writing space? It'd be brilliant to give you a mention or share your project. So tweet us at JU Podcast or drop me a line on the Facebook page. It will give me a positive reason to visit Facebook instead of just looking at where people have gone on holiday. And if you're too shy, even for any of that, you can always leave us a quick review on iTunes instead. Okay, that's quite enough yapping from me, so let's hear from this week's guest, Aimee Brown. Aimee is a writer and avid reader of ChickLit. She spends much of her time writing, raising 3 teenagers, binge-watching shows on Netflix, don't we all, and obsessively cleaning and redecorating the house. She spent several years building up a network of writer friends and contacts blogging over at LoveChickLit before finally getting her own book out into the world with Little Grey Dress, which was published by Crooked Cat in August of this year. Here's our chat, and towards the end of the conversation, Aimee's connection did suffer a little bit, but then she was speaking to me all the way from Montana, so do bear with us. Okay, Aimee, thanks a million for coming on Joined Up Writing Podcast. Hope everything's going well with the launch of your new book. So why don't we start off there? Why don't you tell us a little bit about Little Grey Dress and what's been going on with that?
So Little Grey Dress is my debut romantic comedy novel. It is getting great reviews. It's done really well on the release, and it's a lot of fun. If you like weddings and engagements and breakups and maybe some nonsense, you'd probably love it.
That's brilliant. And so what was the, I know this is going to be going out in 2 or 3 weeks, but so just tell us when it was released and where people can get hold of it for a start.
It was released on August 2nd. And you can get the print on Amazon and Barnes & Noble, and you can get the ebook on Amazon. It's also on Kindle Unlimited.
Brilliant. And I've seen lots of blog posts and things flying around, and you're already getting lots of reviews in, and it seems to be going really well. Yeah.
It's been fun. I have a lot of contacts after being in the business for a while, so I have a lot of people that had wanted to read it. So it's been good.
That's brilliant. So, well, on that subject, why don't you tell me a little bit about that kind of journey to publication? Because I know you've been kind of book blogging for quite a while, and obviously you did one of our blogs for us in a recent episode as well. So, was it always the plan that you were going to write a novel? Were you writing in the background? Were you kind of a reader first and then a writer? Why don't you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I started my first blog, which was called LoveChickLit, about 2.5 years ago, with the intention knowing that I would write a book. So I was kind of using that platform to get ahead of the game. After a year, I moved it to what's now called For the Love of ChickLit, and I've been continuing to do book reviews up until maybe the last month. I've been kind of a little bit slower because of the book release, but I always did plan to write a book. I was kind of writing in the background, getting really good information from some other authors. I've learned a lot. If I could suggest that anybody who wants to release a book do it that way, I would. It's really jumped me ahead of what I should know.
Yeah, that's good. I suppose it kind of works two ways because, as you say, you're reading lots of books in the genre that you want to write in, and also you are making contacts and putting the social into the social media side of things.
Yes, it works really, really well. Not only do you get to find all these amazing authors and see how they do it, but you get to hear their trials and tribulations and kind of learn from those as you go.
So at the top there, you mentioned you described your book and you talked about it being a romantic comedy, and you've just described it there as ChickLit, and that you've got, obviously your blog is kind of themed around that kind of genre. What were you always planning to write in that particular genre? What is it that you love about that genre?
I was always planning to write in it. I like the happy ending. When I read a book, I like to feel like I'm not drained or had a dramatic experience. I kind of like it to feel like a happy ending or a vacation right from my living room. So it's kind of just my personality. I was a teenager when the 90s rom-coms started coming out, like You've Got Mail and Sleepless in Seattle, and those always just kind of stuck with me. So it's just what I write. I don't know that I could write much of anything else.
It's just what you're passionate about.
Yeah.
And what are your thoughts on I mean, I only use the phrase ChickLit because that's how you describe it, but I know I've spoken to people in the past, and it sometimes is one of those things. Some people are quite happy with it, and obviously it's a genre that's on Amazon, and I'm not talking about the genre, I'm talking about describing it as ChickLit. Sometimes people say romantic comedy, those kind of thing, and some people have got quite strong feelings about it, and they don't like the term, they think it's a bit kind of derogatory, but you seem to embrace it, and you're more than happy to kind of put it out there as that.
Yeah, I do. There is that theory that ChickLit is dead because it was overdone in the 90s with authors like Sophie Kinsella and Candace Bushnell, but there is a need for it. Women want that romantic comedy. I mean, they've even stopped making the movies that they used to, so everything's now the overdone funny, and it's more, I don't know, it's more R-rated than the good PG-13 or even rated G ChickLit, where it's just a feel-good movie, and I feel like it's kind of coming back. Maybe the phrase not so much. So Amazon calls it romantic comedy, but it's still ChickLit. You can put a Band-Aid on it, but it's still ChickLit.
Well, it's obviously a really, really popular genre. There's, like you say, there's a market there for it. I mean, yeah. If you go into a bookstore or over here, if you go into supermarkets and things where they sell books, you can tell it really dominates the shelves. It's kind of usually split between kind of those kind of books and like crime, really. Yeah. I think in the UK it might be a little more popular than it is in the US. Mm-hmm. But I'm hoping it makes a comeback big like it did over there. Yeah, I'm sure. Well, good luck with it. So tell me a little bit about, I read a recent blog of yours, I think, or an interview that you did, and you talked about how you actually, got a lot of the novel done. And I think you used National Novel Writing Month as a bit of a impetus, a bit of a kickstart to get a lot of words down. Is that right? I did. I've done NaNoWriMo the last 2 Novembers. The first one I did, I didn't get much done. I was kind of distracted with kids and life. Mm-hmm. But this last one, I was determined to get this book finished. And surprisingly, I just sat myself in my chair and did it every single day. I wrote 2,500 to 5,000 words, and I had the rough draft done in 10 days. And I felt really good about that. So I took a break and went from there. But I completed it. That's brilliant. And what are your thoughts about nano in general? Is it something that you get involved in the whole thing? The the online scene with it and all that kind of stuff, or do you just pretty much keep yourself to yourself and just crack on with it?
I kind of avoided the whole the chat and the meeting a lot of new people, not because it's not great, but because I am very easily distracted. If I could buy a laptop that had no access to the internet, that would probably be best for me. So I kind of stayed out of it. I did make some friends just through social media that would add me just because I was participating. But yeah, I did kind of avoid the social media side of it.
I know what you mean. It is distracting. For people that don't know, actually, by the way, listeners that might be listening, what we're talking about with Nano is it's National Novel Writing Month, and the aim of it is to write a minimum of 50,000 words in the month of November. It usually is. I know they do Camp Nano and different bits and pieces over the year, but that's the one. I've done it once, and I was the same as you. I loved it when I did it, but I can't. I don't think I could face doing it again. It's quite a big commitment. Around work and family and everything else. So, but it's a great feeling when you get to the other end. And I don't know whether you were the same, but I really like seeing the little word targets and seeing that, chipping away at the word target every day. I like
that too. Yeah, it's motivational to see that you've actually moved up the scale.
And I think the other thing with it is it encourages you to just bash out the first draft, because sometimes, I've had a couple of conversations with guests recently and talked about this idea of, sometimes we're held back because we're trying to perfect the first draft rather than just getting it down. But no, you don't have time to hang around. You just have to keep getting the words out, don't you?
Yes, and that helped me because I am one of those perfectionists where I want the chapter that I just completed to be ready to go. I don't want to have to fix it. So it's hard for me to wrap my head around just right, even if it's bad. But I was able to do that with that. So fingers crossed I can do it again.
Well, on that subject, so I know, as you say, you've got other commitments. You obviously got your work and home and everything else. So what, if there is such a thing for you, what does kind of a normal writing day or writing time look like for you? Have you got like a set approach or anything?
I don't have like a normal schedule, but what I try to go for is when I do have time to sit down and write, I just try to go for 2,000 words. So if I can complete that, I feel like I'm doing good, even though it's not every day. Yeah.
And do you find that if you have a couple of days away, how do you find when you get back to the page? Have you kind of lost the momentum? Are you okay? What do you kind of do to combat that, if anything?
Sometimes I feel like I've lost the momentum. I try not to read what I've written if I'm really on a roll, just because it slows me down. But if I do miss a couple of days, I'll go read the last, 2,000 words or the last chapter to try to get back into that mindset.
Mm-hmm. And when do you tend to find, so you mentioned like you aim for 2,000 words or 2.5 to 5,000 or whatever. And do you find that you tend to like to finish at the end of a chapter, or do you kind of stop halfway through a chapter? What have you got any sort of tricks? Or...
I do. I try to stop at the end of a chapter. It's easier for me to know that I have something complete and that I'm starting at a new point than it is for me to pick up in the middle. Yeah.
And what? How do you sort of approach your plotting side of things? Do you plot the whole book out? Do you know what's going to happen before you start, or is it just a case of you've got a bunch of characters and you just off you go?
I name my characters and I have no idea where it's going, and I just after the first or second chapter they just start writing it themselves. So it kind of goes from there. There's some things I go back and change at times, but I kind of just let the characters talk for me.
So when do you tend to get to do your writing? I mean, I know you would say you don't have a set schedule, but do you tend to find, is it like before everyone gets up, or is it last thing at night time, or is it during the day?
It's normally during the day. So my husband runs a business with one of my sons. My daughter works a full-time job, and I'm just here with my 13-year-old. So when he's preoccupied midday, normally I'll sit down and work on something. But in the morning, I just take that time to try to make myself sane with some coffee and go from there. Try to find my moment.
So when do you fit in all the blogging and everything else? How do you find the other side of it? I mean, in terms of, because as you say, you're kind of very active on social media, you do lots of book reviews and lots of other blogging and kind of connecting with other writers, plus obviously all your own marketing and your own promotion. Tell us a little bit about that side of things.
So I am very OCD organized, and I will take one day for each site that I have, and I will spend maybe 8 hours that day scheduling posts, getting things ready, so I don't have to think about that particular thing for a whole week. And I even do it with like my Facebook page. The only things that I don't schedule are just the random Facebook posts and just random tweets throughout the day that don't really have much to do with books. But anything book related or blog related is all scheduled in advance, about 2 weeks ahead of time.
That's really good. And how have you kind of picked all that kind of stuff up? Are there particular places or particular people that you've kind of learnt these things from, or, you know, where did you pick up? Because it's often that side of it is the side that most writers hate.
Yeah, so I just read a lot. So I will just look up something, for instance, like keeping your blog organized, and I will read through everything on that front Google search page. And so I read, I research, I watch blog videos, all kinds of stuff until I feel like I know what I'm doing, and I go from there. So I'm always asked what my trick is, and my trick is just patience and organization. So, you know, in that 8 hours that I'm scheduling blog posts, I may spend 2 of that looking for content and just reading about different things about the blogging world. And so I feel like after 3 years, I've got a pretty good grasp on that and marketing. So it's just really just reading.
And what kind of things have you found have been particularly successful or worked well for you? Are there things that, you know, you thought, well, I'll give it a try? I know you do things like blog tours and different bits and pieces. Can you give us a kind of sense from that side of things, what's kind of worked well, or what, you know, your kind of go-to things are?
Yeah, so blog tours start early. So I do have authors sometimes that will email me and tell me that they have a book out in a week, they'd like to schedule a blog tour, and that is definitely not enough time. So as a blogger, there are thousands of authors out there, and sadly, many of those authors will just look for someone who has eyes to read their books. So we get lots and lots of emails. And so I really try to stress to people that bloggers are super overbooked. We're overbooked, and it's kind of just a given that we'll just do it. And so start early. If you want a particular blogger to read your book on release day, they need at least 6 weeks, because they may have 30 other books ahead of you. They may have a vacation. They probably have a life and a family. So start early. That always helps. And it will help you guarantee that you get a yes if you're sticking with the bloggers that actually read your genre and that get that email early enough for them to be able to schedule you in.
Well, that was going to be my next point, because presumably there are some people out there, they just assume, well, you know, you're a book reviewer, so you can review my book, but they probably haven't necessarily put the time in to read your blog and find out what you do.
Yeah, that's probably the worst thing about being a blogger, is just the emails from people who, like, I specialize in ChickLit and romantic comedy and a little bit of women's fiction. But 3/4 of my requests are from just random people. I mean, it could be a sci-fi, and if they have one funny line and one, you know, romantic moment, they consider that my genre, when that does not qualify. So it's like, you really have to read. And I always ask authors, why do you want a baseball fan to review your wrestling video? You don't, because they don't watch that. So they're going to give you a bad review no matter what, because first of all, you didn't research them, you don't know what they do. And second, that's not their specialty. So they may know the wrestling rules, for example, but they don't know the baseball rules. So, I mean, you really have to pick and choose what you want. Do you want a bad review or a mediocre review, or do you want someone who absolutely adores what you've written? And to be proud of what their genre is, you wrote that genre, you should be proud of it.
That's true. And how do you approach actual reviews? Because I know people have different ways of approaching it. Some people will only post a review if they liked the book, or, you know, if they've got something positive to say about it. Some people don't do any negative reviews. Some people, you know, are kind of a bit more even-handed with it. What's your kind of thoughts on that?
I do. I'm not going to bash someone ever. So that's just a big no-no in my book. There's always something good about a book. If there isn't, your best bet is just to walk away. There's no reason to trash an author for something that they worked really hard at. It's easy to look at a book and think that, oh, it wasn't good, you know what, I'm just going to let them have it. But that took hours, months, sometimes even years of their time. And so I would never go about that. So I kind of lay mine out as, I set up the whole what the book was about, and I do what I loved and what I didn't love. And so there's always something of at least the loved. Sometimes there's things I didn't like, sometimes there's not, but I kind of go from there. And I think I've never given a 1-star review, maybe a 2 to 3. But there's always something good. And if you're actually good at doing book reviews, you can find it. If you can't, maybe it's not your niche. So there is something good about every book.
That's good. That's good. And how do you approach sort of networking with other authors, and kind of, have you got like a locally, geographically, like where you are, have you got kind of a little network, or the nature of the internet, is it just wherever and it's on social media?
Yeah, for me, being in Montana, so Montana's a state where if it's not about history or it's not about the outdoors, they are not interested. So I have nobody here who wants anything to do with my book. No bookstores, no nothing. So everything for me is online. I have to do online. I do some groups, social media, and so I love learning about other authors, whether they're my genre or not, and what things that have worked for them and that haven't worked for them, both in writing and in marketing. And there's so many people out there that know so much more than me that it's fun to see that side of it, even if I can't get it locally.
That's good. And in terms of actually, so tell me a little bit about the actual, when you actually were writing your book, what was your favourite part of writing Little Grey Dress, would you say?
My favorite part, I'm not good at conflict, or I didn't think I was good at conflict. But apparently I really write a hell of a mean girl. So that was fun. Mostly because it's so unlike me. It's fun to make someone as evil as you can think of, to have them create all the controversy. I did have to learn that, though, because I'm not by nature, and I hate saying this, but it's true, I'm not very imaginative. I have a hard time making up scenes that are going to be equally realistic with ridiculous. I end up falling more towards that ridiculous side just because I'm more of a realist. But it was fun to try to find that balance there to make that mean girl really fit into the story.
Well, I was hoping to talk to you a little bit more about that, specifically with the antagonist, because I read I think it was one of your recent blog posts, and you specifically talked about writing the mean girl. And I thought in the epilogue section, I thought we could maybe talk a little bit about that and how you kind of approach it, especially considering, as you mentioned, it's kind of goes against your type or your kind of personality, your own personality. So that's interesting. So what was your least favourite part, would you say? What was the bit you kind of, out of the whole process, which was the bit you struggled with, would you say?
Yeah, so for me, it's the physical romance. I have a mouth like a sailor. I have no problem telling people what I think, but if it comes to something that has to do with physical intimacy or sex, that will shut me up faster than anything I could ever think of. So any kissing scenes, there's no sex scenes in the book because I just can't do it. I don't know. I'm not 15, I'm 39, but for some reason I just cannot go there.
I'm with you on that one. I'm not great at that. My book that I'm writing at the moment, I have actually got they're about as close to sex scenes as I can probably get, and they're quite, and I really, really did struggle with them. I haven't actually read them out loud to anybody. I haven't actually taken them to the critique group because I'm a bit, I'm not sure. But I did really have to push myself to do it. But I think it's a good exercise to. I mean, obviously it depends on your genre and the age that you're writing for and everything else. Anyway, It sounds like it's probably not too much of an issue for you because of the particular genre that you're going for, and the kind of, your target market is probably not too much of a problem. Is it something that you would consider like kind of working on for want of a better term, like in the future? Is it something that you think you would give it a go, or kind of push yourself out of your comfort zone a bit?
I don't really know about the sex scene part. I think I need to work on like just kissing scenes, period. When I wrote Little Grey Dress and I sent it to the beta readers, one of the responses was, "Did I miss something in this chapter?" No, you didn't miss it because I didn't write it. I don't know how to write it. So I probably do need work there. But I don't know about the sex. I don't know if I could do it. And they have these whole writing sex workshops. God, I would be just mortified. If I was even on one of those online, I don't know if I could do it.
Well, you say push yourself out of your comfort zone and see how you get on. So you mentioned there about beta readers. So for people, maybe aspiring writers that are out there at the moment, that they might even be just thinking about starting to write a novel or whatever. Just explain what you mean about that. We have talked about that on the show before about beta readers, but give us a bit of an idea of the process. So presumably you bashed out your first draft. And then where did you go from there? What did you go straight into an edit? Just tell us a little bit how the process worked for you, because everybody's different.
Yeah, so my first draft was a disaster. I decided to go through and do a little bit of organizing, which I was unable to do before I started. So, chapter by chapter, I did a rewrite. My book is laid out past and present. It's a double inverse storyline. So, half of it is from the present forward, and half of it is from the past backwards. And so after I was done with the rewrite, I did a quick, maybe 2 or 3 day edit, and I sent it off to 3 authors that I know and my best friend. One is a UK author, 2 are American authors, and my best friend is from America. And so they all had about 2 weeks to read it. And in the first draft, I tried to redeem the mean girl. They decided one of their main comments was, there's no redemption, just let her die out of the story. But they gave some really good advice, that being one of them. There was a couple other things that I didn't even notice, like for instance, part of the story, Aimee, she's gained some weight, and the dress that the book is based off of was a dress from before she had gained that weight. So one particular author said, well, how would she ever fit into it again? And it's something I didn't even think about. So obviously it would need to be an altered dress, so I had to work that into the story. So they worked really good at finding things that maybe I had thought of and inserted with just my thoughts, but not actually with my writing. So beta readers are really good for finishing incomplete storylines, plot holes. And they're really they overlook all the little things like the editing mistakes, but they find the story structure problems, and that's really super helpful.
That was good. So then did you go back and do a rewrite? Tell me a little bit about how you went from there.
Yeah, I didn't actually do a complete rewrite. I took all of their suggestions, and I do advise not to get too big of a beta reader group, because you'll get too many ideas and opinions, and your book will end up being something that's not totally you. So I used those 4, and I didn't have a lot to do. I had 5 or 6 things that I wanted to focus on, and so I just went through and I kind of redid what they suggested, and then I put it away for a couple weeks, and then I printed it out and I read it, and that was when I noticed some other things. But they got me much closer to my final draft than I think I ever could have on my own.
So, so going forward then, if you just as we kind of wrap up the main part of the podcast, if you had one piece of advice for aspiring writers or people just starting out on their writing journey, what would it be?
To start early. So pick your platform, pick your genre, and find something that people are going to want to see from you, and start that before you write the book. It'll really help you in the long run to build that base, so you won't be pitching your published book to your mom and your sister. You'll be pitching it to your 1,000 or 10,000 followers that you've built over that time it took you to write the book. That's
really, really good advice, and it's obviously working out for you. I can see that you're busy on social media, and the book launch seems to have gone really, really well.
It did, yeah.
So it looks like it's paying dividends for you. So well done, congrats. So for people that want to find more information about you and your work, where can they go? Where can they find you online?
So the best place would be my website, and it's author.aimeebrown.com. I would check the notes because my name is spelled the hard way. It's got all the book info. It's got all my social media info, as well as absolute nonsense on the website.
But that's entertaining. It's entertaining absolute nonsense, so that's fine.
It is. Yeah, I have a bit of a potty mouth, so be prepared for that. But it seems to go over well.
Often does on social media. That's good. All right. Well, I appreciate you taking the time. I know you're going to hang around briefly for our epilogue episode. And one more question. I'm going to speak to you a little bit about antagonists and writing a little bit more about how you got on with writing your antagonist. But for now, Aimee Brown, thanks a million for joining us on Joined Up Writing.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's been a lot of fun.
So yeah, there you go. That's about it for this week. But don't forget to get in touch and let me know your thoughts on the show, or just give me a quick note about what you're up to. I'm still looking to make Book Bloggers Corner a regular feature, so do get in touch if you want me to feature one of your reviews on the show, or maybe you can recommend a blogger that might be interested. You can get in touch in all the usual ways. You can get us on Twitter at JU Podcast. You can find us on Facebook, Joined Up Writing Podcast, or on the web, joinedupwriting.co.uk. And of course, I'm on Twitter as Mr. Kelly to you. So that pretty much wraps up this week. So thanks for listening to the Joined Up Writing Podcast. Let's get joined up. I'm Wayne Kelly. Happy reading and writing, and I'll see you next time.
joined up